one thing that makes me admire the Beatles is like they're all very very different characters. I mean, they're obviously people, but like in some ways they're very much the same. Like George Harrison and Paul McCartney and John Lennon, they all, they played multiple. They were multi-instrumentalists, and Ringo, I'm sure he, especially nowadays, knows how to play multiple instruments. Or I could be wrong. If I'm wrong, I mean, it is what it is. He doesn't do shit. The cool thing that I liked about the Beatles, is that, they all kind of, they all could have played the drums, but they needed a drummer. And Ringo was like, I'll be the fucking drummer. And while they were all kind of changing up like fucking different instruments and shit like that, like he was just the drummer, man. And he was content being the fucking drummer. Octopus's Garden is one of my favorite fucking songs by the Beatles, excuse me. I really like, obviously, some of the more popular ones like Strawberry Fields Forever, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds and stuff like that. But I mean, another reason why I like them is they were able to experiment and change genres a lot. I mean, bands do that, but like there's, like some bands don't do that. I mean, and teach their own. Some bands, it's cool that a band doesn't change sometimes, but sometimes it's cool that a band changes, and it's cool that a band like completely, like almost completely, unexpectedly turns into something else. They go from this garage rock and then they turn into, they're very inspired by Bob Dylan. You got Rubber Soul and whatnot, and then they start doing, some LSD and stuff. But apparently, LSD, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds is coincidental. Anyway, moving on. But still, during that period where they were at their peak fame, essentially, literally crowds were louder than they were in the stadiums, and they literally couldn't even hear each other. You couldn't even hear the music. That's that's like the urban legend or whatever, which I'm going to believe it's totally true. Equipment's gotten a lot better since then, obviously, but at the same time though, that's just crazy to think about. Yeah, during the time where they were no longer performing, they were investing a lot of their times in creating, and that was allowed them to go into places where, music that they probably won't be able to perform live, most likely. I'm sure some of the songs definitely they could, but, and I'm sure nowadays it'd be, a lot easier. And I'm sure, as a band like them, they'd be able to figure it out if they were, like most bands, I'm sure, a lot of this stuff is not new material or whatever, but, like most bands, a lot of times the business gets in the way. If they were just allowed to create, if it's just like, like the best was going to come no matter what. It was more along the lines of like, based on a lot of the footage and documentaries and stuff, a lot of it was mostly just, it was artists that were, and some artists can handle business better than others, I'll say that much. But it happens a lot, bands just can't, they buckle under pressure, man. You know what I mean? Like it's just how it goes, man, sometimes. But if it's almost like in some ways they didn't, I don't know, maybe it could have happened. Once again, maybe if they just took a little bit of a break, everything would have been okay or whatever. But it just seemed like you get to a point where, it just completely invades your life, and the only thing that you can do, some people is to completely rebel against the entire thing. In case of like John Lennon, for example, marrying an underrated underdog, kind of artist, that, for a long time, I didn't listen to anything by Yoko Ono because I listened to what everyone else had said about her. She's the reason for the Beatles to be broken up. She's, her music's terrible and stuff like that. But it's like, if you say that kind of stuff, you're really not identifying, culture in a world, on a world level, on a universal level. Times have definitely changed in a lot of ways, but, obviously there's still, contemporaries still pretty, it's still got probably a long ways before, but it's always got, it's got world embedded in it. And, like, for example, modern equivalent, I would say most likely, you got K-pop and everything with BTS and whatnot. And it's just interesting how, that movement has evolved. You know what I mean? Like and at the same time, though, I mean, like, obviously, you know, I mean, there are other, you know, Rolling Stones also, you know, Beach Boys, and there's always, you know, The Who, and all these other big bands, The Doors, you know, all these big, you know, I wish I could, you know, Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix. I mean, I wish I could name off other bands other than just, you know, rock and roll bands, but that's all that's coming to mind right now. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, I guess I'll end it with this, like, you know what I mean? Like, if you do get into the, like, that kind of, you know, that level of whatever, I mean, whatever they had, I mean, for some reason, you know, a lot of people admired it and still admire it to this day. And probably will continue to admire it. But it's just interesting how some bands, like, are able to, you know, I mean, it's not even like, you know, I mean, I don't think it's necessarily, you know, they advertise themselves more, or I mean, not that there's anything wrong with that. You know what I mean? Obviously, you know what I mean? Like, you know, you gotta pay the bills, you gotta eat, you got your family, you know what I mean? But, I mean, there's something that transcends, I mean, like, you know, I mean, I don't know what, I mean, you know, I just blatantly, you know, or generically call it substance, but, like, it's not like there isn't substance in all music, you know what I mean? It's just weird. I mean, what was really the Beatles shoved down, you know, people's throats? I mean, maybe to some people for sure. And I'm sure the Beatles is not some people's cup of tea, you know, fucking A. And I guess one last thing to add, is even though they were able to go out of their comfort zone, they were able to also step back to, you know, where it all started, essentially, with, like, you know, Let It Be, essentially. And I guess to add one last note, they were creative sponges. I mean, like, I mentioned Bob Dylan, but another person that comes to mind was Jimi Hendrix. You know, a lot of R&B, blues, rock, you know, pop, other acts that were going on at the time. And, you know, competition could be healthy a little bit. But at the same time, though, I mean, these guys were, like, in another fucking world. And I don't, you know, and a lot of people will, you know, once again argue otherwise. But, you know, this is just my opinion. And for whatever reason, I feel like mentioning that the songs that stuck out to me the most were probably by George Harrison because of how different they were. And once again, that incorporating also world music, if I didn't already mention. But I mean, I at the very beginning, I didn't even know who was singing who. I mean, I was not familiar with their voices, excuse me. But, you know, after listening to a great portion, I mean, I'm not going to say I listened to every single song they've put out so far, and I don't know if I ever will, but, I mean, they were able to literally almost put out the same song sometimes, and yet it still was fucking good. But at the same time, they could also do something different. Like, I don't know, man. They're just they're the fucking Beatles, man. Now, this might be a little, argumentative or a little debatable or whatever. But, you could definitely say, I mean, I think that the Beatles sometimes not just said, but also in their writing, some very controversial shit, for fucking sure. And maybe that's just because they had the power to, or, you know, they're not the only ones. You know, once again, another example would be like the Doors, for sure. I mean, like, that comes to mind. But there's so fucking many other fucking groups. So, yeah.